Now, welcome to World Chefs Podcast. You're listening to World on a Plate, and I'm your host, Ragnar. Today, we are joined by a Master Sommelier, Matthieu Longuere. Originally from Bordeaux, Matthieu, he began his career in the hospitality industry, moving to England back in 1994, and has held a senior sommelier position in some of the country's top hotels and restaurants until in the 2005 became a Master Sommelier, which is a distinction that is held by less than 300 people worldwide. And since 2013, he has been the wine development manager at our partner Le Cordon Bleu in London. So really happy to welcome you to the show, Matthew.
Thank you very much.
You. How's the
No,
weather in London?
it's sunny for
It's
once. Yeah,
sunny. Oh,
it's sunny. Yeah. No, we'll have a nice weekend. I mean,
nice.
I won't say a warm weekend, but it will be sunny. So that's at
Ah,
least one box ticked.
that's excellent.
But
Thanks. So tell me, Matthew, again, yeah, welcome for joining us. And I mentioned in my introduction, you're the wine development manager for the Cordon Bleu. What does that consist of?
so essentially, it's mostly creating courses on wine and beverages, and teaching them, running them. So the big one, a big chunk of my work is we have our own diploma that we developed when I started 13 years ago. So diploma in wine gastronomy and management. So is that works 6 months a year. So this is this this is 6 months of my life every year, pretty
Yeah.
much. And on the rest, I teach for other beverage courses for professional, on beverage courses for amateur private customers. So last night we did an evening of Bordeaux, and I teach also for on culinary student on culinary program, and I try to adapt what we talk to them about beverage and food and wine beverages to what their future career is going to be.
I'm wondering.
And we also have course on nutrition and plant-based. So I also take between of the relationship between wine and beverages, the different relationships that you have when you're talking about different type of food.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I'm wondering actually whether in your courses you have a lot of chefs or culinarians.
I,
Through your career, do you feel that chefs give food and wine pairing enough attention?
well, I think so. I think, to be honest, it really depends what they are doing and the type of restaurant, the type of establishment. So, if your format is a tasting menu, you can't really avoid it
Mm.
because with tasting menu, if you're giving people 20 dishes to try or 7 or 8, if you're more moderate dishes to try, uh, you want to make the most of it. You want to create an experience, but also we're running businesses as well. Huh? So if selling beverage with the food is a big plus, but after if you are your business model as a chef is you have you expect your customer to spend 45 minutes an hour in the restaurant,
Mm.
the dynamic is very different.
Correct.
So it really depends of your business model.
Yeah. So it can be a great advantage for a chef to have a basic understanding of food and wine pairing if they are creating that sort of experiences for the guests.
No,
Uh,
definitely. Yeah.
And so, I mean, how do you, in the past, I mean, I suppose that you have worked in the part of the industry where food and wine pairing is very
Mhm.
important. Have you had a good collaboration with the chefs through your career? How do you work together, like for a successful pairing?
So to be honest, in this industry, on both sides of the industry, whether you're a chef or a sommelier, you have to deal with egos.
Mm.
So sometimes you have people who are able to put their egos down, and usually it goes well. And
Yeah.
sometimes you have to adapt, or they have to adapt, depending where is the balance of power at the time. So no, I think it really depends again where you are. So I've had to sometimes I found it quite frustrating and difficult, like anybody, to work with chef, and sometimes it worked very well. But I don't think there is there will be a universal factor. Is I mean, to be honest, quite a lot of time, if the chef name is in front of the restaurant, uh, the sommelier usually has to adapt.
Right,
But
right.
that there is nothing wrong with that, huh? Because after all, it's if it's their name, they want to make sure that everything is in right order. So that's fine. After, as a sommelier, you can choose to work there or not. This is more the thing.
But I mean, and I've seen in my own career this. It can be amazing experiences when when you put ingredients into the food that actually will adapt even better to a certain wine that you would like to
Oh,
put.
no, definitely. I mean, to be honest, it's quite easy to work that way because at the end of the day, a wine, it's illegal to tamper with it. With your dish, you can adjust the seasoning, you can adjust the ingredient, you can play with different season, different things, you can do things with it. Wine, at the end of the day, you can't change the wine. So you can choose different type of wine with different nuances, that's for sure. But uh, if you have to specifically each time open 20 bottle of wine to choose the right one with the right dish
Yeah.
on your research project, it is going to be an expensive research.
Yes. An interesting one, but
An
expensive.
interesting one. It will be very lot of fun. Actually, at the end, you might be bonding with the chef better, so this might help. But it's no, it's a tricky one. So what you want is just about everybody needs to understand the interaction and what they want to achieve from a pairing.
Yeah.
So
Have you seen like has there been a change over the years? You've been in the business for a long time. Do you feel that there is a change in towards chefs being more interested in the wine pairing, or has it always been like that? Or
I think it's always been, but the big difference
Mm.
is for me, chef and sommelier people in general in hospitality are more interested in their customer now, which
Right.
for me is more important because back in the day or when I started 30 years ago, it was we do our thing and the customer will enjoy it because we are very good at what we're doing.
Mm.
And now it's more about, okay, what do the customer want? What can I do that fit with it, that is within what my intention are, what I believe in, but that I can share with the customer without imposing anything on them. Sometimes we had a tendency 30 years ago, it was a little bit like religions. You come to us, you do whatever we tell you to do, and you better enjoy it. So
Okay.
now everybody is much more open-minded and and there is more understanding of that. So it's not so much that there is a better understanding about food and wine pairing or better kind of more will from the chef to be interested in it. It's more the approach is quite different, and we are much more customer focused now
Mm.
than we were 30 years ago. And I think this is more interesting because at the end of the day, the customer pays our bill. Huh? So, and we want them to have a good experience. And food and wine is part of this good experience. So it's more the approach, I think, that has changed a little bit in that way, not so much the interest.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think in the culinary schools today, food and wine pairing for chefs is not necessarily something that is enforced, which is a shame. Like if for our young chefs who are listening to us now, I mean, how do you recommend they start to study? I mean, do you have any sort of basic, what are the basic
Oh,
success?
to be fair, it's pretty simple. Is each time they try wines, or each time or vice versa, uh, when they prepare dishes or they're doing dishes even at home or preparing for exam or whatever, they just open a bottle of wine, whatever it is, and look about what's happening. So in wine, you have acids, it what make your mouth water. You have tannins, it what dries your mouth. Sorry, I'm French, I'm patronizing. Huh? You have tannins, it's what dries your mouth. The alcohol is kind of the warm, fuzzy feeling, a bit like ginger, is quite explosive on the back of the palate, and you have body. So that is the wine side that you're going to have to to pair with the food. In food, you have acidity as well. Again, that makes your mouth water. You have fat that coats your palate. You have sugar that also coat and also give some sweetness. And you have salt. Salt cancel out tannins and cancel out acidity. So these things are, and I forgot spices. So if you have spices and heat, alcohol and tannins enhance spices, sugar and acid tend to tone it down because sugar coats, so it slows down the release of the spices on your tongue, and acidity make your mouth water, so it helps cleanse it. But so it's we see it's literally 30 seconds for me to explain, and after that, it's all about experimenting
Yeah.
and understanding that something that you like. If you like spices, you will really enjoy a wine that enhances the spices. If you don't, but you will want something that tone it down. So again, we're back to the customer. What do they want? If you're famous for very hot, spicy fusion type of, you might want to offer them more of the enhancing the spices, enhancing the variety of flavor in. If you are much more traditional, but you will try to find beverage that tone it down. So
Mm.
it's all about that. And also, there is more and more no and low in our job. So more and more people want either don't come from a culture where they drink alcohol. I mean, our schools are international, so we have about 60 different nationalities, and a good 30 or 40% of the students never drink alcohol. So
Mm.
as a chef, this is also something that you have to consider.
Mm.
So
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, what for you are like, if you think of examples of food and wine pairing made in heaven, a classic, what is it that makes them work so well? Do you like, you have any sort of,
I mean, again, I think they work very well in an environment. And so the classic one, I think if you are on a terrace and you can see the oyster bed, somebody chuckles oyster and you drink your glass of Buscadet with it, wow, it's fantastic.
yeah,
Uh, if you do the same thing stuck up in top of a mountain, it's not necessarily going to work.
correct.
So it really depends of, so historically, most of them were circumstantial.
Mm.
All of the pairing were circumstantial. There is a beverage made somewhere. There is a product made somewhere. Let's put the two together.
Yeah,
When you do food and wine pairing, you have two ways of looking at it. You work with similarities, so light and light or heavy and heavy, or you work with contrast. So if you have something acidic, it will cut through fat, protein. A lot of the historical pairing were made with similarities. So it was all fine to have foie gras and sauterne, very light and fruity. When you were after that going to sit down and have coffee and stay 2 or 3 hours at the table, or when people were working very hard after their meal. But nowadays, uh, it's for lunch it would be a bit too much. So some there are some. Well, I love, for example, stinky cheese, things like well, Langres, where you're from, or Epoisse, or
mm,
and sherry, for example, a dry sherry or a dry Madeira, fortified wine in general, because uh, I'm getting older.
mm,
So I've noticed that if you have something quite strong in flavor, the advantage of sherry or fortified wines, the dry version of them, is the flavor will last 4 or 5 minutes sometimes.
yeah,
So if you're having something very rich in terms of food and something quite strong in flavor in terms of wine, as long as the both can take it, you end up eating less, drinking less for longer.
yeah,
So I think it's for me, this is the type of thing that works because I always find it quite dangerous as if if in order to balance out the food you need to drink a lot of liquids, this can be quite dangerous. So for example, beer and food for me is a tricky one because unless you drink beer that nobody wants to drink, so things like lambic or proper beer, I love them, but it's like, fine. In England, you say it's like Marmite. You love it or you hate it.
yeah,
99% of the people will find that weird.
too much to have.
So it is quite. You end up drinking a liter of beer just to to finish your dish. So it is tricky.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, and so, yeah, talking about classics, are there any ingredients that are completely impossible, very challenging, sort of what you call the enemies of wine that it's hard to pair?
Alors,
A bit like
yes
that.
and no. I mean, for me, what I found difficult, the most difficult would be temperature. So if you're serving something very cold with something that is very hot, that will clash disregarding of the ingredients. Because of course, you taste will hurt, it's just
Right.
pure basic chemistry. But after, it's more about nowadays, you have so much variety in wine that you can always find something that will work with the food. So, for example, you have orange wine, you have things like that that actually
Sure.
would work with a lot of the traditional enemy of wine. So, if you're looking at asparagus, if you're looking at dressings, but the
Yeah.
main issue, though, is your customers still have to like the wine that work with challenging ingredients. So it's one thing to say you have wine and food goes, but people need to enjoy them.
Yeah.
I mean, I know at home, if I open a bottle of orange wine, I will drink it, but I won't have to bother about sharing. My wife won't touch it because
Yeah.
she doesn't like it. So it's a matter of taste. So you have to bear that in mind. I don't think there are that many enemy of wine because you can find sake. If you have something, for example, that is lack a bit of substance in terms of dish with a lot of foam, a lot of espuma, you just will have to. A sake would tend to work quite well because the mouthfeel of the sake, which is much richer than wine in general, will will make up for the lack of protein, lack of substance of some dishes if they are very liquid, like foam, jelly, these type of things.
Mm.
So you can always find things that work together, but after, bottom line, does it work with your customer or will you enjoy? So enemy of wine, I think for me is kind of an oldish concept
Right.
because also it's an enemy of wine with kind of a Western European palate. So again, at the school, we have people from Asia, South America, from everywhere. So what some things that I would have said all my life, it doesn't work, they love it. So I just don't say anything, and because we all have got different taste, huh? So this is a tricky one. You always have to put everything into context.
Mm.
So you can't just say that doesn't work or that works. So that doesn't work in that place, but that would work in that place. Sorry.
That's really interesting because, yeah, I remember when I was studying, and this is a long time ago now, maybe 30 years ago, and there was sort of certain rules that we had to, like, they should be followed, and otherwise it's a faute de goût, like you would
No,
say.
no, no, exactly. Yeah.
And
But the thing is,
so
yeah, but
today,
bitterness, for example. So
second,
you have some country. So in England, people don't like bitterness.
hmm,
In Argentina, they drink more vermouth that is bitter than wine.
yeah,
So you have some culture
yeah,
where something that we want. So a lot of the ingredients that are enemy of wine would trigger. So a lot of for example, if you look at anything with a lot of iron, so anything green, things like chicory, all of that, essentially they're very bitter. So
yeah,
with a lot of wine, acidity and tannins will enhance that bitterness. If you have something more basic like a sake, or if you have a white wine with pretty much no acidity, or if you have something weird like a macerated white wine or rosé, this actually or a bit of sweetness, you won't have that issue. But it will the bitterness is not going to be enhanced. But after you back to will people want to drink rosé with it? Will people want to drink things that work with it? But
yeah,
you can always find beverages that actually work. So in a tasting menu, it you can do that because tasting menu is an experience.
yeah, mm,
If it's a meal where somebody traditionally will have their three-course meal, you can't force things onto people.
yeah, yeah, mm.
You just have to say, okay, what do you want? And if they want red wine with meat, sorry, with fish, they will have red wine with fish. I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm from Bordeaux. We have red wine with oyster. Huh? Bon, we
Yeah,
make up for it by having sausages and shallots and red wine vinegar with it, and crepinette. But
absolutely.
again, you're back to the food. You can make something work.
Exactly. And I mean, you mentioned before also, you mentioned quickly cheese. I mean, I was told when I was a very young person, 18-year-old, starting to learn that. And so you finish your red wine with the cheese. And then that sort of has been changing over the last decades. So cheese has become a lot more complex way of looking at, you mentioned like whiskey, sake,
I
uh,
know exactly. Yeah.
white wine, sweet wine, dry wine, sherry. You can start to look for other things. What like you know? can you tell us more about cheese and wine pairing? What sort of cheese will go well, and maybe, look, all the
So
misconceptions
the
about
trick,
the website?
so yeah, it's funny because also 30 years ago, the type of red wine we were drinking were very different. So historically, wine was drunk with food and pretty much solely with food. Uh, Nowadays, if I look at England or if I look at the north of Europe, or places I go on holiday, the vast majority of people are drinking wine as a drink. So not with their food, they drink wine when they go out. So if you're drinking wine when you go out, you don't want something that is going to make your mouth water too much. You don't want something that dries your mouth too much. You want something smooth. The problem with this smooth red wine, if you have something like a cheese that is very salty, very salty or very or dish with or a lot of fat in cheese, huh? You will end up with your wine tasting literally like berry juice, like Ribena, we call it in English, or in French, sirop de cassis.
Yeah.
Uh, it- because it will strip out all the substance of the wine. But historically, the wine were lower in alcohol, not so smooth, and high in acidity and tannins. So there was enough of tannins and acidity for not all of it being stripped out by the salt and the fat. So um, I think, well, we had actually a cheese and wine pairing last week. So what we did is we had champagne to start with goat cheese. Uh, so because of the acidity of the champagne, I'm sorry, that's me now. Kind of the acidity of the champagne kind of balance out the creaminess, the freshness of the goat cheese. The only red wine we had was a high acid, low alcohol, juicy red wine. That was with a camembert, so we went full on French stereotype. I put my beret on. But as you say, there are a lot of different things. So with a stinky one, with a kind of a washed rind one, type Époisse, long, fleur de. Enfin, here we have stinking bishop. But it's you could go for a fortified wine. The classic that still work is sweet wine and blue cheese.
Mm.
But again, it's not something that you will be able to enjoy in large quantity
Yeah.
because so for, there are a lot of different wines that will go with a lot of different cheeses. I don't think there is one fit all because a lot of people also don't eat the rind in the cheese.
Mm.
So whether you eat the rind or not will also make a massive difference because if you eat the rind, it's probably going to make it easier to go with the wine because quite often they had more texture, they had a kind of an earthiness to it that will balance out the fat in the cheese. And sometimes, depending on the cheese, the only flavor is in the rind. If you have something like Bria Savarin, it's like butter or cream. There is no flavor unless you eat the rind or you put truffles in it. So it's
Exactly. But that's really fascinating. And I mean, yeah, we talk about cheese and wine, and that's a very French discussion we're having, and in French. But like we see so many new wine regions popping up, and I'm not just talking like what we call New World, but all over Europe, you know, in East Europe and then everywhere that are coming onto the market.
but
Even
they're new to us.
yeah, which is new.
They're
That's
not
enough.
new
This is
to
like a
them.
new one, yeah, because we call the new world was America, South Africa, Chile, Argentina.
Yeah.
But now, like we have a newer world of like Georgia, Romania,
Yeah, but I mean, Georgia, they've
Slovenia.
been making, yeah, Georgia, they were making wine 5,000 years before Bordeaux.
They,
So
they they
it's new
were.
to us, it's not new to them, basically. So this
But
is,
I did come across a Georgian wine in London when I was there last time, and before I would never come across a Georgian.
okay. Yeah, no,
So
fair enough.
yeah,
Yeah.
so they're coming to the market, and I guess wine production is becoming more. You know, wine selling is a more global market now. What do you think are like most exacting new wine growing regions, or that we didn't know that now we're getting to know more? That what should we be looking out for in your opinion? Well, you've been in London, whereas
So
like
usually, so the thing is, me being in London, to be fair, it's a bit truncated because I'm originally from Bordeaux, as you mentioned, and in Bordeaux we only drink Bordeaux. So me moving to London is I wanted to try something else, and I stood a better chance to try Burgundy in London than I did in Bordeaux. So no, I think it's more about so the more new regions will be moving away from. So if you're looking at New World, is anything looking for cooler climate? So they're moving away from the traditional area where it was warm and they had to irrigate toward cooler, fresher style of wine. And in the old world or in your and the new when you're talking about New World in South Africa, they've been making wine at the same time as the Medoc was drained in the 1500. So some New World region are old. But if you're looking at, I think you have a lot of country like Portugal, like Greece, um, uh, that make really, really fascinating wine. But for me, it's all about balance, especially when you're talking about food and wine. So what I would be more interested in is wines that tend to have more acidity, more freshness, more tannins, without being too aggressive, and where in places where they don't use too much oak. So um, you have Austria is very interesting in. I mean, the thing with London is we have access to pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So define new, but no, I think Greece is really interesting because they tend to be the wine are not always very low, very high in alcohol, but they always have this kind of freshness. Same thing for the vast majority of Portugal. Austria is also very interesting, but you have for probably the worst person you can ask this question to
Yeah.
because for me, there are some really interesting wine everywhere. So if you're looking at France, uh, places that, if you're looking at all the center of France, Auvergne and places like that, you the climate has worked in their benefit.
Yeah.
So things that were able, I mean, a very famous, very popular wine with chef is Chacoli in the Basque Country. Well, because also you have a lot of Swedish star restaurants over there and they all own a winery and make Chacoli. But I remember Chacoli 30 years ago, it was like, it tasted like battery acid and you needed to be Basque to drink it. So climate change has improved a lot the regions that were struggling, create more challenge for the new, for the more established one. But yeah, it depends where you are because I suppose in France you won't have access so much to wine from outside of France, uh, unless they made by somebody from the region. So in Bordeaux you find wine from Argentina, from Chile, from South Africa because
That's made.
they have wineries there.
Mm.
So I think yeah, I think well, Portugal, Greece would probably be my answer, but you won't necessarily find those in France, really.
Exactly. Well, hey, Matthew, thank you for sharing all that. And if our listeners are interested to learn more, well, Cordon Bleu, you offer this in sommelier, also for chefs, right?
No,
You,
no, definitely. I mean, to be fair, it's we have alumni who end up working in wine shop, in restaurant, having their own business. We have a restaurant called in London, which is affiliated with Le Cordon Bleu, and our sommelier is studying for a Master of Wine, but she's also an alumni from us. So it's we're doing a lot of everything, but it's not only yeah, it's everything that touch with wine and beverages. Sorry.
then I don't know if people can follow you or Cordon Bleu or yourself. You're doing any social media and
Oh, I'm really bad in so. Alors, I'm the opposite of. I'm too old. I
I
don't
think
do that. But
exactly.
actually, Le Cordon Bleu, yes, yeah, you can look at. There are some a lot of people who are far more clever than I am, and far more in terms
But
of social media.
I think you gave us the best advice. Is actually it's all about the trial and error. You have to taste.
Exactly. Yeah.
Go.
And customer, don't forget your customer. They pay the bill. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Matthew, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for joining the podcast, and that's a great topic. And I think for our chefs listening, something that if you're in that dining experience, then yeah, it's something that you have to grasp, but not to be afraid to just trial and error, and not to listen to preconceived
No,
messages.
exactly. Yeah.
Your own
Keep it open.
openness is the key. Well, I thank you very much again, Matthew.
No, thank you. Thank you, Ragnar.
Thank you all for
Cheers.
listening. Thank you for listening. You're listening to the World Chef Podcast. I'm your host, Ragnar Fredriksson, and this is World on a Plate. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.